The night she said it, the
It's so
city
good to
was
see
holding its
you.
breath, traffic lights
Come on in, I've
blinking
been
like
looking
they were
forward to
waiting for
this.
permission to change, rain hovering in the air without falling, and I remember thinking that some moments announce themselves with fireworks while others arrive like a whisper that changes everything anyway. We were sitting in my kitchen, mugs between our palms, steam rising like uncertain thoughts. She had always been honest in a way that made people uncomfortable, no warm-up, no small talk to cushion the truth. She looked at me, not with desperation but with resolve, and said, "I want a baby, can you help me?" The sentence hung there, heavy and exact, and in that pause I saw every version of my life rearrange itself. I swallowed, laughed once out of reflex, then felt my chest tighten as the words escaped me, "I am going to be a father." She didn't answer immediately. She watched me the way you watch the horizon to see if a storm will break or pass, and that patience told me more than any reassurance could. We had known each other for years, friends through failures, confidants through heartbreaks, witnesses to each other's small, stubborn dreams. She had watched me rebuild after my marriage ended, I had watched her choose herself after a love that asked her to disappear. This wasn't a reckless ask. It was a question shaped by years of trust. She told me she didn't want romance or rescue, didn't want a fantasy built on lies. She wanted honesty, commitment, boundaries written clearly, and a child raised by two adults who chose responsibility over fear. As she spoke, I felt the quiet math of it add up: doctor visits, schedules, birthdays, the long nights that turn into mornings without sleep, the weight of showing up when it's hard and staying when it's easier to leave. I thought of my father, who taught me how to fix a sink but never how to stay. I thought of the man I'd become, steadier now, less afraid of the mirror. The rain finally fell, tapping the windows like a countdown. I asked questions, careful ones, about expectations and futures and what happens when we disagree. She answered without flinching. We talked about co-parenting agreements and therapy and the way love can look different and still be real. Somewhere between the second mug and the sound of thunder rolling away, the fear in me softened into something else, purpose, maybe, or courage I didn't know I had. When she left, the kitchen felt larger, emptier, and full all at once. I stood there a long time, hand on the counter, imagining a tiny hand gripping my finger, imagining learning how to be better not for applause but because someone would need me to be. That night, sleep didn't come easily, but neither did doubt. If you're listening to this story and feeling the weight of a choice that scares you, remember this: sometimes the bravest thing isn't leaping without a plan, it's choosing to build one together. And if stories like this make you pause, reflect, and believe in second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more journeys that change ordinary lives in extraordinary ways. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in patience and clarity, a slow weaving of intention into reality, and every step felt like crossing a bridge I could finally see. We met with professionals who asked hard questions and smiled only when the answers were honest. We wrote things down: custody, finances, holidays, what words we'd use when the child asked where they came from. There was no pretending this would be easy, there was only the promise to be present. I learned that courage isn't loud, it's consistent. The day she called to tell me the test was positive, my knees gave out and I sat on the floor, laughing and crying like my body needed to really remind itself how to feel. "You okay?" she asked, gentle and steady. "I'm here," I said, and meant more than geography. Time took on a new texture after that, appointments became milestones, calendars grew hearts and stars, and the future stopped being an abstract concept and started being a person. We argued sometimes, not about love but about logistics, and we learned how to fight fairly, how to listen without winning. I practiced saying the word "father" until it fit my mouth, until it stopped sounding like a costume and started sounding like a calling. When the ultrasound flickered and that small, undeniable rhythm filled the room, I felt a door open inside me that I hadn't known was locked. I promised then, not with grand speeches but with quiet resolve, that I would be the kind of parent who shows up early and stays late, who apologizes when wrong, who teaches by doing. Friends had opinions, of course, some skeptical, some inspired, but none of them lived in our shoes. We built our own map. On nights when fear crept in, we named it and kept going anyway. On mornings when hope felt fragile, we protected it with routine and laughter. And when the day came, the room bright, the air electric, the moment irreversible, I held that tiny, perfect weight and felt the world narrow into something manageable and sacred. She looked at me across the room, eyes shining with exhaustion and triumph, and I nodded, a silent thank you for trusting me with something so precious. Life didn't become simpler after that, it became truer. Sleepless nights tested us, joy surprised us, and love, real, working love, grew in the space where fear used to live. If this story reached you, if it made you believe that family can be chosen and built with intention, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about courage, connection, and the moments that redefine who we are. Becoming a father didn't arrive all at once, it unfolded in 1,000 quiet proofs, each one asking me to choose who I would be when no one was watching. The baby came home wrapped in blankets that smelled like clean cotton and new beginnings, and the house learned a different language overnight, the soft thud of a bottle warming in the sink, the clock ticking louder at 3 a.m., the particular cry that meant hunger versus the one that meant loneliness. We moved through those first weeks like astronauts tethered to each other, careful, amazed, exhausted, learning the gravity of this small life. I discovered that fear can coexist with competence, that love doesn't require perfection, only presence. I learned to change diapers with one hand while humming off-key lullabies, learned that patience is a muscle that grows with use, learned that showing up is a habit you practice daily. We found our rhythm, imperfect and honest. Some mornings we laughed at the chaos, trading knowing looks over cold coffee. Some nights we sat on the floor, backs against the couch, admitting we were scared and promising to keep talking anyway. The world had opinions, labels, assumptions, advice that arrived uninvited, but we built boundaries and let the noise fall away. When the questions came, we answered with truth tailored to
tenderness, teaching our child early that love can be chosen deliberately and still be deep. I watched myself change in reflections I hadn't expected. Softer where I used to be sharp, braver where I used to avoid, steadier when storms hit. I apologized when I snapped, learned when to ask for help, and discovered that humility is a form of strength children understand instinctively. As months turned into milestones, I felt the future widen. Not into fear, but into purpose. I wasn't replacing anything. I was becoming something. And in the ordinary miracles, first smiles, first steps, the way a tiny hand finds yours in the dark, I understood the answer to that night in the kitchen. Yes, I was going to be a father. Not because biology demanded it, but because love invited me and I said yes. If this chapter resonated with you, if it reminded you that families are built by choice, courage, and consistency, then stay connected. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove life's most powerful transformations often begin with a single, brave conversation. The years didn't rush past us. They layered themselves, slow and deliberate, like bricks laid by steady hands, each day adding weight and meaning to the life we were building. Parenthood stopped being something I did and became something I was. School mornings arrived with mismatched socks and unfinished stories, with backpacks heavier than they needed to be and questions bigger than I was ready for. Why do some families look different? Our child asked one evening, eyes earnest, voice careful. I took a breath, felt the familiar flutter of responsibility, and answered the way we had promised each other we always would, with truth and warmth. Because love doesn't follow one shape, I said. It follows people. And I watched understanding bloom, quiet and confident, like it had been waiting for permission. There were moments when the old fears returned, when exhaustion sharpened tempers, when disagreements felt louder than laughter. But we had learned the skill of repair. We talked. We listened. We chose the long view. I learned that being a father meant modeling how to handle mistakes, how to stand up gently, how to say, "I'm sorry," without shrinking. On weekends, we built traditions that didn't need explanation. Pancakes flipped too early, walks that turned into adventures, bedtime stories rewritten until the ending felt right. I saw my own past loosen its grip as I gave what I hadn't always received. Consistency, affection, a sense of safety that doesn't have to be earned. And then there were the moments that arrived unannounced. A school play where a small voice scanned the crowd and found me. A scraped knee soothed by my hands. A whispered, "I'm glad you're my dad," that rearranged my bones. I understood then that fatherhood isn't proven by titles or timelines. It's proven by staying, by showing up again and again, especially when it's inconvenient. As our child grew, so did my gratitude, for the courage it took to say yes, for the partnership that kept us honest, for the life that taught me how wide the heart can stretch without breaking. If this story carried you through doubt into possibility, if it reminded you that love can be intentional and still be extraordinary, then don't let the journey end here. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more powerful stories about choices that change everything and the quiet bravery it takes to make them.